Hey guys, it's me, Brandon Yamada from Exchange. Today we're going to be talking about e-commerce SEO, and I've got the best people in the game. We've got PNdigital, I've got Paris, Raichura, and Tom Rochester from PNdigital to talk about how you can integrate SEO, answer all your top questions about e-commerce SEO, and go through all the stuff that you want to hear about e-commerce SEO. So just a little bit of background. You guys already know about me. I'm Brandon Yamada from Exchange. I help people buy and sell their stores in the 5, 6, 7-figure range. I'm a business broker. And then anytime I have a guest on, I make sure I do extensive, background, and vetting with them. And Paris and PNdigital are the best, the #1 rated SEO agency in the UK, as rated by Clutch. And so these guys are big dogs. They work with clients that are 6, 7, and even 8-figure clients. So these guys, what they work with on a regular basis is like what you're going to want to implement for your stores and what you guys really want to take to heart, because these guys really know what they're talking about. So with that, hi Paris, hi Tom. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Brandon.
Absolute pleasure.
There you go. If you guys can't hear, just make sure you turn up the speakers a little bit. Our mics are a little bit different in volume, but thank you so much for joining us, guys. Could you tell us a little bit more about, PNdigital, what you guys are, what you guys do, for your agency, your SEO agency?
Sure, Brandon. I mean, you've done such a great job, but you didn't leave me with much to say. But essentially, we're a marketing agency. Our bread and butter is SEO. As kind of e-commerce has evolved over the years, we've started to specialize and take on a lot more e-commerce clients. So many of our clients that we have are 6, 7, as you said, and even 8-figure store owners. Really what we help them to do, we help them to scale on Google, helping them to achieve more organic rankings for their e-commerce store, capturing a lot more revenue than they typically would via paid ads. And essentially, some of the clients that we work with are some major international brands. Tom and I have consulted to even corporate level brands. So we deal with quite a high level of clientele, but we also do deal with startups and SMEs as well. Essentially helping store owners to get more growth from their organic SEO. Tom's our head of e-commerce, so he works more on the technical side. He's got about 15 years of experience, and Tom, I'll let you do a bit of an intro yourself.
Thanks, Paris. It's a pleasure to be on, so thanks very much. The geek normally doesn't get to talk that much to a lot of people, so it's quite a nice opportunity. Like Paris says, I got about 15, 16 years experience. Absolutely love what I do. I don't think you could do this job without really just loving it, really. There's so much data to crunch and everything, so we Paris and I see, well, the whole organization, but we see, every client we work with as an extension of our business. The pride we have in the work we deliver is as if it were our own business, and that's why we have such a high retention and clients going, working with us for years and years.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you guys on, because SEO is something that a lot of store owners are overlooking, and I'm seeing a lot of big brands doing SEO the right way, and they're crushing with it, and it's adding so much to their bottom line, their profit margin, and their valuations. And so it's a really important topic that a lot of these coaches, courses, and gurus don't really talk about. So I wanted to bring this to you guys so you can get some value out of it. So with that, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to jump straight into the questions that everyone wants the answers to, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, great.
So the first burning question we have is, why should e-com store owners even bother with doing SEO for their e-commerce sites if they can do ads and just learn how to do ads better and just scale that to the moon and forget about SEO altogether?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brandon. I mean, essentially, I'm not going to knock paid ads, because we run paid advertising here, and we think it's a great form of investment, especially for an e-commerce store, because it provides them with an immediate ROI, and essentially it can help them to scale. However, what we tend to find is a lot of store owners come to us when they get to a point where either their CPAs may have changed on paid advertising and they're looking to diversify, or ultimately they're looking to get an edge over their competition and have an additional revenue stream through, for example, SEO. The beauty of it is that with SEO, you don't need to consistently spend more to chase your ROI. On paid advertising, for example, you can spend it may be 50,000, 100,000 a month, less or more. For example, on Facebook ads, you can get X ROI. If you want to achieve more sales, you want to achieve more revenue, you have to essentially start to scale up that ad spend. With SEO, it's the opposite. You can have a budget that's required to outrank your competition, and essentially, with that budget that you're spending, you can generate X amount of sales per month, and those sales can be continuing for years down the line without you having to have any type of ad spend. So essentially, your ROI is just consistently improving, as opposed to you having to spend more to generate that ROI. So that really is the biggest reason why e-commerce stores should really be considering SEO. And also, just to add to that, it's quite a risky strategy to be relying on heavily on paid advertising. If there's been a number of stores in the last year that have been shut down by Facebook for a number of reasons, which essentially means that an e-commerce store owner's revenue is just switched off overnight. Which is quite a scary thought. Obviously, having that SEO as a kind of diversification strategy, it's not something that's just gonna turn off all of a sudden. And there's ways to get around any Google updates and things like that Google may introduce. So I think it's definitely good to have a kind of risk-averse strategy in place. But ultimately, what a lot of our store owners find is that the ROI or the growth that they get from SEO over time far outweighs their paid advertising. For me, that would be the two biggest reasons why e-commerce should really be focusing on SEO. Tom, is there anything that you kind of, in your opinion, you feel you want to add to that?
I think you summed it up pretty well, to be honest, Paris. But yeah, I mean, it's that the other thing is you don't know when the cost per acquisition is going to change, but it's just the cost per clicks, especially with AdWords, can fluctuate wildly. We've seen in the past, haven't we, where a competitor of a client comes along and say the average cost per click was $2, £2, and then 2 weeks later somebody decided to up that bid to stretch everyone out to push them down, and it's 10, and it suddenly becomes, the ROI drops. I love the fact that SEO doesn't rely on pay per click, and the stronger the site becomes organically and more traffic, that it's self-fulfilling. Really, it keeps getting better. That's why I love SEO. I think it's kind of, something is like witchcraft, and it's not. It's very methodical. I think we work in a very methodical way in our agency. But that's why I love it, that people don't have to spend per click.
Yeah. So I'm going to speak a little bit on the, on the broker side when it comes to actually the value of your store. If you go to sell your store, your e-commerce website, what kind of factors SEO is in that. And there's a few different ways it affects your store, because on one end, it's affecting your profit margin. If you have healthy SEO, your profit margin percentage is going up, and that's a big factor to potential investors and buyers when they're looking at your store. Extra net profit is always a great thing, because any extra net profit is going to be extra value for your store when you go to sell it, because net profit is the most important factor when it comes to the valuation of your store. So it increases your valuation ultimately. One thing to keep in mind, guys, if you have a store and you're not doing SEO, or if you are doing SEO, that can make or break the difference when you go to sell your store, because there's tons of different stores out there. I mean, Shopify is getting more and more popular. E-commerce is getting more and more popular. And there's a ton of stores that these guys can pick from. They're looking at dozens of stores when they look to buy. And if your store has the edge, if you're generating $1,500, $2,000 a month in profits off of SEO, then that can make or break a decision whether they want to buy your store and push up the multiple even higher. So just keep that in mind, guys. So we're going to dive into some more questions. Thanks so much for asking that. The next question I want to dive into is, what are some of the common SEO myths and misconceptions that owners have?
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Brandon. I mean, essentially, something that we get asked a lot is, can we do SEO as like a one-time thing? So it's something that can you do like an overhaul of our website, and then all of a sudden we can start to generate revenue. I mean, look, one thing that's really important to note is that with SEO, the most important thing really is consistency. Okay, so you need to optimize your pages, you need to be posting new content, you need to be attracting good quality links, driving traffic to your website frequently to ultimately improve your site's structure and SEO presence. It's not something we can do a good foundation level of SEO where your site has a a basic level of SEO implemented on it as a one-time thing. But if you really want it to be a revenue generator, it's got to be something that's done consistently, at least for a certain amount of time, where it then becomes more self-fulfilling. Also, just to add to that, I mean, if you think about the competitors on Google and if they're doing SEO, if you suddenly stop doing SEO, obviously it's natural over time that your competitors that are doing SEO are naturally going to be outranking you on Google, simply because they're going to be working aggressively to get a lot of rankings for their keywords on page one and at the top of the page. And ultimately, if your competitors are doing it and you stop, naturally over time, your SEO presence, is not that you're gonna lose your the work that's being done, but it's going to be that a competitor's website is essentially getting a lot more authority than yours because they're consistently working on it. I mean, another misconception I would say is that a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on link building, which can work out quite expensive in the long term, but it's not really all about links. Technical SEO, especially in the last year, has become a lot more apparent for a lot of stores, especially for the e-commerce stores. So it's not a case where you need to be spending a lot on links to try and outrank your competition. Google's algorithm has over 200 factors, right? Quality links is one important ranking factor, but it's not all of them. So, we've ranked a number of e-commerce stores above their competitors that have far less links than them, just by doing a good level of sort of technical SEO each month on their website. So there are ways of working smarter that can be a lot more cost efficient for stores. And I think the final misconception, again, I don't know if there's anything Tom would like to add after, but is people believing that SEO may not get them a return on investment. Now, I can't stress the importance of how profitable SEO can be for e-commerce store owners. And just to put it into context, like if you look at, for example, the top position of Google, it attracts around a 30% CTR. So that's a 30% click-through rate. If you compare that to the top positions on Google Ads, that attracts around a 5% CTR on average. So just to give you an idea, if there's a particular keyword, say, that's attracting 5,000 searches a month, just by being in the top position, you're automatically attracting about 1,500 quality visitors to your website, because these are high intent searches. And if, for example, you're capturing, even 10% of those sales at a price point of, say, $30, that's 150 sales a month. That's 4.5K in additional revenue. And that's just of one keyword, right? So, if you times that by even 10 keywords, that's an additional 45K a month in revenue. And there's stores out there that we've ranked for example, thousands of keywords. So I think a misconception of not getting an ROI on SEO is it's ludicrous, because it can be incredibly profitable if it's done correctly. That was quite a long answer, Tom. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, if you think of any other misconceptions out there that you get asked.
Yeah, definitely. They're great points, though. Get asked all the time. The other one I think we hear almost as equally is, do paid ads help with SEO? If you do Google AdWords and you see a lot of traffic and your conversion's high, will your SEO be impacted, hopefully positively? Well, we can say from all our research, and there's enough out there of other people talking about it, just from what we've seen, it has no impact whatsoever from paid traffic. It's slightly different when you've got referral traffic, but actually from paid ads, unfortunately, guys and girls, no, it doesn't. Google's there to take your dollars per click, and that's it. Ultimately, Google don't really want you to rank, so you don't have to pay for the click. So yeah, it doesn't work.
Awesome. Okay, great. Learned a couple things there. So that's going to lead me to my next question. Like, when people actually, implement SEO and they start doing it, how long does it actually take to start seeing the results from SEO?
Yeah, I mean, typically that, depends on, upon any type of website. When, for an e-commerce store, we would always need to do an audit to see where their site's at, because ultimately a lot of these store owners You know, a lot of you guys out there are running, you know, Facebook ads or Google ads or some form of paid traffic. So there may well already be some level of SEO that is working well on your website. So we typically would need to see where your site is at from an SEO point of view. And depending on where it's at, that would then determine to an extent how long it's going to take to start seeing results. You know, if your site is getting masses and masses of traffic each month, you're probably going to be in a better position SEO wise than, for example, you know, a store that's just, well, you will be in a better position SEO wise than a store that's just come out that's had no traffic. But having said that, you know, at its most basic form, Google takes, you know, 60 odd days to crawl work being done to a site. So we would always advise clients that, you know, typically you start seeing results within the first 90 days. So it could be within, you know, 1 month, or it could be within 2 months or 3 months. But you know, after the 3-month period, you would start to get a good understanding of how this is working well for your store. And you'll start to get an idea of how sort of scalable it is from an organic point of view to start generating a good return.
Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
Only probably that, yeah, we do say 90 days, but quite often we'll see, you know, keywords coming in much faster. You know, it's about data collection, which we'll probably go into at some point, and understanding that data. And it, like Paris said, if it's a more established, mature site, it's probably got low-hanging fruit there, or fruit that just needs, you know, looking after a bit more. So it is site-by-site basis, but you should be seeing results from any SEO provider if you're not within 90 days, unless it's a completely brand new site and you're taking a, you know, big hitter term like bank loans. You know, you have to be a bit more realistic, but generally, you know, most cases, 90 days, your SEO company should be showing you proven results. And if they're not, you've got to be kind of asking those questions, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, I'll just talk a little bit from, you know, what I see from, you know, the broker side when you go to sell your store, because I look at dozens of stores a week, guys. Like I'll get dozens of inquiries of owners who want to sell their site. And, you know, once they make it past that first level of like qualification and I dive deeper and actually vet the store, I always take a look at the SEO. You have to take a look at the SEO. And I'll tell you, with the successful stores that I see from these 6, 7, 8-figure stores, typically if they're doing SEO right, what I see, like I can see clearly when they start SEO, and it usually, just like you guys said, 2-3 months, I start seeing this big uptick. And I never see that trend just like go down. Like I can see when there's like algorithm changes or whatnot, and it'll take a little dip, but it still trends up. And so I can see clearly that this traffic is trending more and more and more, which I know means higher and higher traffic or higher and higher sales, which I see on the profit loss statement and their financials. And so, you know, like I said, the people who are doing this and doing it right are getting the benefits, because SEO is kind of something that just keeps paying you more and more over time and is very passive in that sense. So, you know, that's what I see. So really take note to what we're saying here, guys, because it can be a huge difference for you guys in the future. So that being said, let's dive into what's the single most important piece of information for people who are like looking to do SEO themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for us, I think if you're looking to do SEO yourselves, great. You know, always respect people wanting to kind of learn something new. Some pointers that we can give if you're looking to do it for yourself is, you know, the first thing is research, guys. And what I mean by research is looking at potentially the right keywords to target for your site. Okay, because look, targeting the wrong keywords for your site and setting up your site for the keywords that actually aren't going to be converting well for you, or aren't actually going to be tailored to what you're doing or getting you the conversions. You know, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're putting all of this work into your site, implementing keywords that you think may work. And keyword research is something that's done ongoing in an SEO campaign. We're always seeding out new keywords, seeding out what competitors are doing, and seeding out different variations of keywords that we can target. So what I would say is, you know, there are tools out there that you can use. You know, I mean, at its basic form, you can use tools like SEMrush, guys, to look at what your competitors are doing. You can look at Google Keyword Planner, you know, Google Trends, you know, just to see if, the type of keyword is potentially seasonal or not. And to see the longevity of that keyword. And there's also other kind of little sneaky things you can do, like using Keyword Tool Dominator, which is a tool that basically scrapes Amazon searches for more longer tail keywords. So obviously Amazon in itself is an e-commerce search engine. If you're looking at what people are typing in there, it's not necessarily going to be as available on Google, but as I said, you can use a tool called Keyword Tool Dominator, and that will give you an idea of what people are doing on Amazon, and you can kind of reverse engineer that and then use that for your Google strategy. I mean, another piece of information I would give is, looking at your site errors. A lot of e-commerce store owners, they set up a site, they run paid ads, they've got no idea if their site has actually got any technical errors on it, and these things can happen at any time. So things like redirecting any 404 pages to actual content, changing 302 redirects to 301 redirects, and also just checking your site for any duplicate content, meta titles, meta descriptions, etc. Getting that level of SEO done is already just going to give you a bit of an edge over your competition, because there are a lot of e-commerce store owners that overlook SEO. So even if you are just doing a little bit extra yourself, if you want to put the time and effort into doing that, it is going to give you an edge over your competition, and you'll start to see that you probably do start to rank well for some keywords that you wouldn't have expected to, by just kind of fixing the technical errors on the website and doing your research beforehand. And finally, what we see really, it's a quick fix. What we see really often, well, it can be a quick fix, but it's just your speed, the website speed. This is so important for SEO, because ultimately the higher the bounce rate that you have on your website, it is a ranking factor, right? If you've got loads of people kind of going on your website and clicking off immediately, it tells Google that you don't really have a good quality website that people want to stay on. And things like having your speed and things like that just up to scratch is just gonna it is gonna lower your bounce rate, because people aren't going to be clicking off because it's taking too long to load. And that alone is an SEO ranking factor that can be quite a quick fix for a lot of e-commerce store owners. But doing that alone will just it will naturally improve your conversions, and it will naturally improve your SEO. So yeah, get that site speed fixed if you can, guys. It will be a big win for you. Honestly, it does make a difference.
Great nuggets. Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they are great points. It's ones that we always discuss internally, when we're talking to clients. I think it's hard to put one single thing, but if I could kind of cheat a little bit and say data, which I mentioned before, and that's collating all your data, and that's everything from your site existing ranking data, the keywords that you are tracking, making sure those are correct, because like Paris said, we often see where people say, we've got this great term and it's a 10,000 search a month term, and you think, well, that's pretty good. Your position 2, you actually look at the conversion rate on that page and it's very low, because it's not a buying term, it's more a query term when people are researching. So the collating of all your data and making sure that it's like from your keywords to how your site's performing, because we can bring the horse to water, so to speak, but to make it drink is a very different thing. The site experience has that. I think that's probably the most fundamental thing, is that your site is working properly, because it doesn't matter what we deliver, and we often give feedback to clients where we say, do you realize that your cart page has got a server error, it keeps bringing up a 500 error, or there's a load time issue because it's going off to a third party. So we often do that for clients because we want them to do well. But yeah, I think it's about data, reading all the data, understanding where you're positioned with your competition, and then using that to form a plan when you're doing your SEO. And don't just jump in and buy a load of links because you read on a forum. Take your time. Even the fundamental things like Paris said previously, metadata, redirections, load times. These are all super important and often forgotten by even SEO companies, which is odd.
Great tidbits. I'm probably going to use that section just in itself for video. A lot of good value there. Appreciate that, guys. So now we talked about this next question a little bit, because I've seen this ever since I've been in the industry. I've seen just person after person get their ad account disabled, get their personal profile deleted, their business manager banned, and all this stuff, this madness. I've in the recent months, watched 7-8 figure stores just blip off the map because their ad account or their page is gone now. Facebook just took it away from them, or they violated something that they don't necessarily know like what happened. And so this kind of brings in the question, with the penalties and algorithm changes, like with SEO, how would an owner know if their site has been penalized with a manual or algorithmic action?
Okay, yeah. It's not as easy as it once was to understand whether it had. Google, a few years back, changed the algorithm so that link penalties, when people were doing, we'd probably call questionable link building, cheap link building where they bought lots of links and the site saw huge gains and everyone thought it was great. And then Google started dishing out what we call manual actions. And that's where literally a team, there's a web span team at Google, would message you through Google Search Console, which I advise every website owner make sure they register with a free Google Search Console account so you can see how your site's performing and any messages such as penalties. But they would put a manual action in there, and it could be from link building issues to cloaking to doorway pages to even things like malicious scripts. Now with sites like WordPress, that people can sometimes have the malicious script hack, and the sites, we deal with a lot of these where we have to fix them because the code's quite tricky to find, and not specifically an SEO job, but it seems to have fallen on SEOs now because we know how to look for it and the impact of it. Yeah, but the manual actions would basically demote your site, and there's different levels. There's a message, and there's various versions of this message, but the first one is effectively, we've noticed something strange with the site. If it's to do with link building, we've ignored it on this occasion. It's basically like a slap on the wrists. Nothing happens, but you are on a watch list. There's no two ways about it, because we've seen sites that have come to us that have said in the past, especially around 2012 to 2014, it was quite big at that point, before the last Penguin update, was they had an initial action. They continued to link build, for example, in a bad way. They ignored all the warnings, and then they were hit with a full manual action. And the full manual action is the worst one, is where your site doesn't appear in Google. So where you'll literally search your domain name, or you will search site : and then the domain name, and it doesn't appear. That's when you've been manually taken out. Like Google has said, you've broken so many rules. We feel there's enough distrust there not to show you to our audience, and you're pulled. And at that point, a reconsideration request has to be drawn up, and how you fix those changes, and that's a whole different thing. The algorithmic one is very different. You don't get a warning; you'll just notice something's wrong. And Brandon, you mentioned this before, where you'll see blips in analytics traffic. Sometimes it's just little dips, and sometimes algorithms that they roll out are reversed quickly within a week. That Google's testing all the time. There was a big one around the 15th of this month that I actually spotted first. Other people, I know other agencies, and the talk on Twitter. We saw this glitch with Google where it was bringing up PDF results and company's house data. It wasn't your standard results, and people were freaking out, to be honest. We thought this is a glitch, and it resolved within 7 hours, and Google responded saying, "We made a boo-boo, we're sorry." But the algorithmic actions, it's normally you'll notice within Google Search Console and analytics, and you'll see something noticeable. And then if you look, Google do publish a lot of the big ones, the updates they've rolled out. If it coincides with that date, it's a strong chance that it's an algo action. But they're pretty noticeable. It's when you start seeing, we're not talking about a 10% blip over a week, because that could be seasonal. It could be, social changes in the world. COVID's going on, so things are different at certain times, But when it's substantial, 30, 40%, and it's over more than a few days, there's probably a good chance it's algorithmic. But that's where we look into it and we say, okay, we can see what's wrong here. There has been some changes, even if it hasn't been documented with Google. your site against others has taken a hit. This is possibly why, and then we go in further to fix that.
And just listening to the overall like tone of that and the different phases and steps there are, that sounds so much more forgiving than what I see on the Facebook side.
Oh yeah.
Because I've never had Facebook apologize for
No.
anything or to any of my clients, and I've never seen any kind of like warnings. It's just like, oh, your store's gone, or your page is gone, or your ad account's gone. And same thing with PayPal too, and even Stripe. I wish they had different levels like that. So if I was going to go with something safe to build long term, SEO sounds like it might be a better option or be a worthwhile option, especially considering the risk for the other ones. So great. Paris, did you want to add on anything to that, or do you want me to move on to the next question?
Yeah, we can, just don't try and cheat the system, guys.
Yeah.
Don't try and cheap out on anything. You're running a successful business. At the end of the day, spend the time and effort to do it properly, because you're like most business owners, you're in there for the long term. And going back to obviously what you do, Brandon, with the valuation side of things, the last thing any store owner wants is to kind of be selling something that's been hit with a load of Google penalties, because I'm sure that would just devalue their store as well.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, guys. I'm the person who will vet these stores, and I will actually check the financials, and I will check exactly where every bit of this money is going in the process of the stores. So, just like Paris said, if you're doing it wrong, I will spot it. Investors will spot it. So, I know most of the people watching this are doing things ethically, but there are no shortcuts if you're really trying to build something long term, something that's valuable to the community, build something meaningful, a meaningful brand, for the world. So you can keep that in mind. There's no shortcuts to success. So I want to move on to the next part, because I actually just had to do this recently. So how important is SSL and making sure it's configured properly? And what is SSL for people who don't understand what SSL is?
Yeah, thanks. This is a good one. I like this question. So SSL is basically a secure certificate. It just means that when somebody's visiting your website, it's generally for payment things, so payment gateway, that their details are not compromised. It's now an algorithmic. It's a Google ranking feature. It's one of the elements it looks at. It's not the biggest, but it's important. The other reason it's important, you'll notice if you've ever used Google Chrome, which is one of the most widely used browsers in the planet, you'll go to a store where it doesn't have SSL, and even with a contact form on there or a gateway where you can add to cart, you'll get a warning notification. Some devices altogether will prevent you from going on that site. It'll ask you to put a password in. And do you understand the dangers of going onto a non-secure site? So that's one of the biggest things anyway. You want your customer to feel safe and be safe, because you don't want your business compromising because something got leaked at gateway. Configuring it properly though is I'd probably say a minefield for not agencies like us, but for ISPs, for service providers, because what we often see is they've called their host, GoDaddy, whoever, a great host, and said, I want to, even if they've just done it online, they've either called or done it online, I want to implement SSL. It's been turned on, but it's not been turned on properly. And what I mean by that is both versions of the site will be operative. So you can go to HTTPS and then your domain, or HTTP. And HTTP is non-secure. And when they're both loading, you have two big issues there. One, which is your customer, user, site visitor visiting, because you don't know, because they're all on Google. And then you're preventing, you're creating a bottleneck potentially, or further problems. And the other one is duplication with your content. If you have 1,000 pages, 1,000 products on your store, and those 1,000 pages are indexed in Google, immediately you've got up to double that indexed. And Google really struggles with, there's some misconceptions I feel personally with duplicate content, that it's not an issue. It's not as bad for product information, but when you're talking about your landing pages, your homepage, your category pages, your blog posts, soon as it starts, we see it all the time. We're dealing with one at the minute, and the previous agency, what they've done is they've not done something similar, and we've got blog pages that are duplicated. and they're not indexing. Google's pulling them out. It's a big problem, and it's so often overlooked because you're just relying on your internet service provider host to do this for you, and really it's not always understood or implemented properly. So it's one of our, during the audit process, it's probably step 4 or 5, or even higher, that we check. We check that SSL, and also that it's a good SSL as well, because there's the free ones. I mean, things like Shopify, their SSL is sublime. It's one of the best there is. So getting it right, just speak to your agency, speak to your developer, speak to your SEO in particular, and make sure that is checked. Even if you're running an SEO campaign, I would advise you to go and check that you do have SSL and you don't have these duplicate URL issues, canonical URL issues, and things like that.
Gotcha. I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about CMS. What CMS is best for SEO, for Shopify, WordPress, etc.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's subjective, but they all have a value and they all have a place. I think for especially SMEs, for the low cost, the low operating costs, WordPress is fantastic. There's so many add-ons, for plugins and things you don't pay for. Because it's open source, you can edit every part of a self-hosted WordPress site, which I think is fantastic. We love WordPress. I mean, I personally love it. We work with a lot of WordPress sites. Shopify, however, is a game changer. It's come on a long way in the last 18 months, and it's arguably one, if not the best platforms for e-commerce store owners to get online, have an SSL, have a payment gateway like Stripe built in, an inventory, everything in under one, and it's rock solid. It's very rare we see issues with hosting problems or anything like that. Shopify is fantastic. So I wouldn't say there is one better than the other. I do your research. Depends if you've got one product. Shopify might be overkill. If it's not, doesn't have variants, so you just sell one item, maybe WordPress. But Shopify, for a lot of people, for stability in growth, I'm not saying WordPress isn't, because it is, but if you're getting to those big traffic numbers that we see, we've got a lot of clients that have began on WordPress and WooCommerce specifically, that they've migrated to Shopify because, of the robustness and how it can allow them to grow. So they're both great.
It's amazing to see how Shopify has grown and just become a better and better platform, a better tool for entrepreneurs. I wish I would have invested in some Shopify stock.
Yeah, me too.
Months ago. I'd be doing really well right now. Guys, if you're watching this live, make sure you drop your questions in the comments so that we can get to them. We're going to get to the Q&A section here in a little bit. If you're watching this on the replay, drop your questions as well, because we're going to be tracking this stuff even after the live is over. So make sure you drop your questions in the comment section as well. So
Brandon,
this is the question that I have. Go ahead, Paris.
I just wanted to add to that for a lot of the Shopify owners out there, because I think it's quite important. It's just to mention to you guys is don't overload your site with a load of apps, because I think that Shopify apps are growing. They are booming. There is a lot of great apps out there. I think what tends to be quite common for a lot of store owners is they kind of want as many apps as possible, because they think, this will be great for doing this. This will be great for doing this. But just remember what I said about the speed of your website, guys. The more apps that you have on your website, the slower your site's going to become. So, yes, get the Shopify apps that you need, but really just get the ones that you feel are integral to to your site and your offering, rather than just trying to overload it with a load of unnecessary apps, because it's just going to slow down your speed. Even from a paid ads point of view, that's going to reduce your conversions massively. So just something to keep in mind.
That makes sense. Sometimes I'll be checking out different sites that I'm vetting, and I'll check on Built With to see which apps that they're using. And sometimes it's just like a wall of apps. I was like, do you really need all that? It's good.
Yeah.
So going to the question that I kind of have, and I know a lot of other people have, store owners, how long should people give, or how long do you give SEO before you say, all right, this isn't working?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think it's a case of, for example, SEO's not working, because there's always something that it can be done to a website to improve it. And it's more about looking where a site at and what needs to be done so that we can see exactly how to get it improving, as opposed to something like paid ads where you're doing all that testing with different ad copies, different creatives, and doing all these other things to try and refine your audience. With SEO, because it's a bit more technical in nature, it's more a case of what do we need to do to get it working, as opposed to it's not working. But if you're with a company, a freelancer, whoever that may be, that's been working on your SEO for a couple of months, and you're not seeing any improvements from organic traffic or your keyword rankings, then it's safe to say that, for example, you probably want to be looking elsewhere. I wouldn't say it's a case of you need to give up because it's not working. I would say that it may not be done the right way. And if your site is being audited correctly and there's opportunities that can be scoped out from an SEO point of view, then there's no reason why it wouldn't work.
Gotcha. Tom, do you have anything to add to that? Sounds like you covered quite a bit.
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just every site's different, so some can take longer than others, but there's always opportunities. It's just performing the right actions to get the result. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is the question I probably hear the most whenever the topic of SEO comes up with these newer store owners or 5 low 6-figure stores. Their question when SEO is brought up is like, well, what type of ROI can I get doing e-commerce SEO? What's the ROI on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the end of the day, we're business owners. We're always, as e-commerce store owners, we're focused on, we're focused on numbers. We're focused on the return on investment. Nobody wants to be spending money and not getting a return on it. There's not a concrete ROI from SEO, because it's not a case of you're investing X amount in ad spend to get X amount ROI. The reason being is because the growth of SEO is really where you want to be focusing, because ultimately you could be investing in SEO for a year, getting X ROI, and those gains could then be staying with you for years. Typically we would be looking at sort of 400 to 500% ROI in sort of the early days. But as the SEO kicks in, as we start ranking for more terms, as we start getting to the higher positions on Google, you can be doing over 1,000% ROI terms. And just going back to the point I mentioned earlier about the click-through rates that organic SEO has, as I said, if you're ranking for a number of search terms that have got pretty decent search volumes and a large variation of those terms with smaller search volumes, you can be capturing thousands and thousands of more sales a month, which can go into 6 and 7-figure revenue figures additional per month. So in terms of the ROI, I would say to kind of give a bit of an answer, yeah, perhaps 400 to 500% in the kind of early days. But there's definitely scope to be improving that as the SEO kicks in, because it does involve momentum, and it's not necessarily going to involve you having to spend more to get the higher ROI as you would on paid ads.
Definitely. And one thing I'm seeing is, a lot of people are learning Shopify, they're learning e-commerce, how to be successful in it. There's not a lot of courses, coaches, gurus talking about SEO specifically. And everyone's kind of chasing this dream of they want to be on the beach and like all this money's rolling in and they're not doing stuff. And, I personally don't feel like there's like such a thing. But SEO kind of gets you close to that in the sense that once you start building SEO, what I'm seeing with these successful stores is it growing and growing and growing, and profits growing more and more and more, and just getting monstrous with stores that have been implementing it for a year and a half, 2 years or more. And so this is the long-term play. If you want to be successful in e-commerce, you really need to take a look at SEO. And I'm not even an SEO guy. I'm just talking about what I'm seeing with my successful stores that are crushing it out there. And another thing to think about is, a lot of your competitors may not be doing SEO. So it's even more incentive for you to do it so you can capitalize on what they're not capitalizing on, give yourself the edge. And then, of course, you're going to get to the point where you're going to run into a competitor that is doing SEO and they're taking money off your plate. And so I don't know about you guys. I don't want anyone taking money off my plate. So you need to do it, whether you're at that mid level or if you're at a higher level. Really need to take a look at SEO because everyone's sleeping on SEO right now. That's what I really believe. So I guess that'll lead me to my last question for you guys. For people who are getting to that certain level, when should someone reach out to an agency like you guys, an agency that works with 6, 7, 8-figure clients, or a good SEO agency? When should people reach out to someone like yourself? When would it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, many of the clients we work with, they're busy. They're busy store owners. Many of them will have multiple stores. Not just one. So I think, for a start, it comes down to time. If you've got the time to learn SEO, if you've got the time to kind of put in that effort to learn how to do it, great. As a business owner, as an e-commerce store owner, if you can do that yourself, that's fantastic. The level of work that it involves and the amount of work to do is extensive with SEO. It is very different to a paid ads strategy. So I think if you don't have the time to be learning and implementing SEO yourself the correct way, to be doing what's required in terms of the technical aspects, the content, the link building, and all these other things that we do, that's the reason why you should be considering hiring someone. And also, if you really want somebody to be keeping track of your organic traffic, your organic rankings, and getting you a good return on investment. To be honest, if you want to have a company that's that can come to grips with that and take that off your hands, to get that return on investment that you're looking for, that's when you should consider hiring a professional, because there is a big difference when you've worked with so many e-commerce stores and rank sites for 10, 20,000 keywords. That experience really does pay off when you have somebody doing it. But there's no reason why you couldn't spend the time to learn it yourself. It may just take you quite a long time to achieve that. But they're really the main reasons. If you again, time and return on investment, and making sure it's done the right way and done correctly.
Awesome. Tom, do you have anything to add to that? You had a good answer.
No, he's answered it so well.
Yeah. Well, basically, I think we went through all the questions that you guys have. Like I said, if you're catching this on the replay, make sure you drop those questions in the comments and we'll get to them. But that being said, we just got some of the best advice from PNdigital, the top SEO agency in the UK, as rated by Clutch. And these guys work with the best stores out there. So I hope this is valuable to you. If there's someone else that you think this would be valuable to, share it with them. Please let people know so we can put this value out here. These guys work with huge brands, and to be able to hear their advice for free is pretty awesome. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And we look forward to your guys' questions in the comments. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having us.